Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful Christmas ornament using Redesign with Prima's Home for the Holidays release. To begin, I'm going to be using Redesign's Artisans Frame Mould, and I'm going to be using a two-step white rapid casting resin. I'm going to be pouring out equal parts step 1 and step 2 into a measuring cup there, and then I'm also, of course, wearing gloves and using this in a well-ventilated area. So I'm going to combine those two parts, stir it really well for about 30 to 40 seconds, and then I'm going to start adding them to my mold. I'm first casting the larger embroidery hoop style design there on the left, and I'm also going to be using the Cardinal Grace mold from Redesign's new release. Specifically, I'm going to be using the branch design. It has two cardinals on it, so I'm going to be casting that whole thing there. It also has some beautiful berries. And after about 10 minutes, my castings are ready. So I'm going to take that larger hoop design out. This is going to be the base of our ornament. And then I'm going to be using this branch and cardinal design here. I'm going to have to cut off the extra bird on the right that's not going to fit, and then I'm going to lay it over the top of the embroidery hoop casting there, and I'm going to cut off some of the left so that it fits better on my casting. So I'm using my craft knife and also bending it until it snaps. I'm then going to be using the Farmhouse Frost A4 fiber paper. This is one of the sheets from that pack. I'm loving these trees, and I'm envisioning adding the cardinal over the top of it. So I'm just going to lay it over the top to see exactly how much is going to fit on my ornament blank there, and then I'm going to cut out what I'm going to use. I did end up cutting a little bit too much, but thankfully I was able to piece together the extra little bit that I needed to fill in the hoop section there. And I'm just cutting off some of the excess from around the top that I'm not going to need, and then I'm using the Decoupage Gel in Matte. I'm going to apply a generous coat to the center. My resin is already white, so I don't have to apply any sort of base coat there. I'm going to position the decoupage paper in that wet medium, and then I'm going to add that extra little bit that I said I accidentally cut too much off. As you can see, it goes back into place quite seamlessly. I'm then adding another coat of the decoupage medium over the top and trimming off some of the excess. When that was dry, I used my craft knife to carefully trim off the excess from inside my embroidery hoop there, just being careful, making sure I'm only removing the excess that I don't want there. And then I'm going to take out a brown metallic paint, and I'm going to use that on the outside border of my casting here. This is a beautiful embroidery hoop design. It's definitely not just for Christmas crafts. This can be used for any kind of craft at any time of year. I love the wood texture in this one, and then of course you've got some beautiful floral details as well. So I'm going to continue to add that metallic paint. I can use a wet wipe to remove any errors that I make, and then I'm going to move on to the Cardinal Grace casting. I am going to be using the same brown metallic paint over the top of the branches. I started off avoiding the berries, and then I decided that I would just paint over the top of those as well. I felt that it would deepen the tone of the red that I layer over the top of those. So I'm just going to add one coat over the branch sections of this, avoiding the cardinal as best I can. And then when that was dry, I took out a red metallic paint, and I'm going to start adding that to the cardinal. So I'm going to avoid the feet, but other than that, I'm painting over the entire bird there with this red metallic paint. Once I finished adding the red to the cardinal, I moved on to layering it over the top of the berries, and I really do like this. The red over the top of the darker brown, as I said, it did deepen the color. So I'm just going to go over the top of all of those berries. And then when that was dry, I took out a black metallic paint, and I'm just carefully going in and adding the black detail to the cardinal's face. Now, this casting is very detailed, so I was able to use it as a guide for where I could put that black and layer that. I used the same brush that had the brown metallic paint to go in and add some darker darker tones over the top of my dry red metallic paint. I also added it over the top of parts of the berries as well, just thinking about all those different tones that we would find. And then I used the same black metallic paint to add that to the cardinal's feet. And then I also added a little bit of it to the ends of the berries. For the cardinal's eye, I used the other end of a paintbrush, dipped it in some white metallic paint, and then carefully added it over the top of the eye on the cardinal casting there, just gently and carefully dabbed that. And then when that was dry, I used the same paintbrush, cleaned off, dipped it in a black metallic, and layered that over the top as well, just to create the pupil of the eye. Next, I used the same white metallic paint. I've offloaded the excess and now I'm dry brushing it over the top of the branches there. I want this to have quite a frosted feel that definitely ties in with the snowy tree fiber paper that we have on the center of our ornament. So I'm just lightly going over the top of the high points. I do add a tiny little bit to the cardinal, but not too much. As I said, I just really want this to have a frosted feel. If this look isn't for you, you could definitely leave this step out. I love adding typography to my projects. So next I took out Redesign's new golden Tidings foil transfer, and I'm going to actually cut out some of these song lyrics, and I'm going to be separating the two as well to make it a bit easier to apply to my surface. I have the cardinal just sitting over the top so that I can work out the placement of the text. So once I have that in place, I did remove the cardinal casting so that I could more easily apply the transfer. Now, the transfer pack comes with a transfer stick, but I like to use my nails when I'm dealing with smaller transfers. So I'm just lightly going over the top of that and lifting the backing sheet there as I'm going. And I just love this gold. I think this is a really fun way to add text. I did separate the second one. I thought I might have actually had it sort of staggered one over the top of the other, but I did change my mind and I'm just going to add each of these. Again, I do have that cardinal in place so that I know where it's going to go. So I'm just repeating the same process here, just using my finger and my fingernail. Remember, if you do have a transfer stick in the pack, so you could just use maybe the corner of the transfer stick instead if you don't have the fingernails to do this step. But I really love the contrast of the gold over the top of the fiber paper. Next, I'm going to seal my transfers with a satin clear coat just to protect them. And then I'm going to be using a bronze metallic paint to highlight the top little screw section of our faux embroidery hoop there. And then I also decided to go over the high points there of the florals on the embroidery hoop and then go in even lighter on the edges and also over the top of the wood detail just to highlight that a little bit. It's not going to be super obvious in the finished product. On the back of the ornament, I'm keeping it very simple. I'm using the same brown metallic paint that we've used on this project today. I'm going to be doing a couple of coats of this on the back so that it looks nice. But again, obviously the front is our main focus. As I said, I want a frosted look, so I'm going to be using a pearl crystal paste around the outside edge of the embroidery hoop, and I'm just sort of dabbing it on and then dabbing at the product to create some raised peaks. And I'm going to be adding this around the entire inside of the ornament there. It's going to go up on the sides a little bit as well. I'm just spreading that with a palette knife until I'm happy with how it looks. And then I did use a wet wipe to pull some of it back from the outside of the hoop so that we don't lose the detail of the wood and the flowers. I'm sort of working it into the wood grain as well to add to that frosted look. And then I'll also dab at the inside again to create some sort of soft snowy peaks. Once I'm finished with that section, I'm going to use the same product on our cardinal casting. I'm doing this before I attach it to my ornament because it's just easier to get it where I want it to go, especially having it sit on top of the branches, which is a little bit more realistic as well for the scene we're trying to create. So I'm just dabbing it over the top. Anywhere that I think that snow might naturally fall and accumulate. And then I'm also going to use a wet wipe to soften it and pull it back anywhere that I've gone a little bit too heavy. When that was dry, I took out some B7000 super glue, which is like E6000. I'm going to apply a generous coat of it on the back of the cardinal casting, and then I'm going to glue it over the top of my ornament and pop that beautiful cardinal in place. Now, I could have left it here, but I wanted to embellish this further. So I took out this faux greenery that I had in my stash. I'm using the same white metallic paint to create a snowy flocked look. You can, of course, buy the branches with the flocked snow on it already done, but I didn't have any of those, so we're making do. And then I'm going to be using this silver string. You get these in a lot of the blank ornaments that you can get at craft shops, and I just had this lying around, so I'm using that today for my hanging attachment. And then I'm going to be using this tartan ribbon. Now, this is a wired ribbon. I'm going to create a simple bow, adjusting it until I'm happy with the length and the size of that. And then I'm going to create a double bow by feeding the tail ends of the ribbon back through the back of the bow, if that makes sense. So both of them have been fed through again, so we have double loops on each side. I'm attaching my greenery with hot glue to the top and the side of the ornament. This is definitely going to be enough to hold these in place. They are very light, so I'm just going to add some dabs of hot glue until I'm happy with how it looks. I'm going to layer in the shorter pieces over the top. I really like the shape of this, adding the shorter pieces. And then I'm going to adjust the bow and cut the ends, the tails, so they look a little bit neater. And then I'm going to glue this in place at the top of the ornament. And here's a look at our finished cardinal ornament. I love how this turned out, and it was so easy to make with Redesign's new Home for the Holidays release. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you would like more information about the beautiful new Home for the Holidays release, make sure you check out the links in the description below. And if you haven't already, we would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of the videos from the Redesign with Prima team. Thanks for watching.